Hello, Carolyn.
Hi, Jenny. It is so much fun for us to finally be up here on stage together because we've been talking about doing this for such a long time.
We have, and as of 5 minutes ago, we just released our press release with our big announcement, which is?
I don't know if you all have seen this, but you should pull up your phones and X right now. But Franklin Templeton and MoonPay have announced our strategic partnership to bring Benji on-chain to the broader digital asset economy.
Yay!
This is really exciting. Jenny, tell us why this is so exciting to bring Benji on-chain like this.
Well, I mean, being able, first of all, it's cool in that you kind of have a DeFi and a TradFi firm coming together and working on a partnership, which we all know that there is going to be a natural convergence here. So, and this is just, I think, one of the first use cases. I know we have plans for many more, but in this case, you can be holding the MoonPay stablecoin, decide that you want to, flip into a money market fund, and we've basically created the swap to be able to seamlessly do that. And so, from a use case, you think about even in your own bank account, it's not easy always to move your savings account into your checking account, and here you could do it 24/7 whenever you want, which is very cool.
Absolutely, because I do think that is one of the big reasons why blockchain is modernizing traditional finance, is making sure that people have their money and have their assets when they want it 24/7. So we're really excited to use the MoonPay institutional platform, MoonPay Trade, which is our smart order router, and really turn this on for everybody by having these standing liquidity facilities so that you can do stablecoin swaps 24/7, get into and out of Benji, because guess what is the original instrument that provides yield?
And how many customers does MoonPay have?
So this is exciting for us because MoonPay has 30 million users worldwide in 180 countries. We have 500 enterprise partners, 7,500 merchants, applications, wallet providers in our network. We settle payments in 120 fiat currencies, which means we have an estimated reach of 100 million wallets. And now, soon, these 100 million wallets are going to have access to regulated, tokenized money market funds that pay yield. And I think it's going to be the earned product of the future.
So for us, it opens up a whole new distribution channel that we haven't had access to in the past. And so that's incredibly exciting. And how nice, 180 countries. And how many fiat currencies you just said?
120 fiat currencies, which is one of the reasons that really brought me to MoonPay, because having been at one of the largest banks in the world, I wanted to make sure that we had this scale and this scope, because we really are ushering in the modern pipes and plumbing of the financial system. So Jenny, I know that Franklin Templeton has always been at the forefront and really a true thought leader in thinking about doing open financial markets and payments infrastructure that is blockchain based. And Benji was natively issued on-chain from the beginning. Tell me, was this part of the overall vision back in those days? And it was a completely different environment than right now.
Yeah, I mean, when we started out creating Benji, it was much more about, this is a cool technology that we think is going to be really efficient. But actually, what's really fun, because we have a traditional money market fund in this one, is we actually calculate the yield, because it's natively on-chain. Most of the other money market funds are shadowed on-chain. So if you're natively on-chain, we calculate the yield every second. So if you're a hedge fund and you want to use it for collateral and you hold it for 4 hours, 22 minutes, and 32 seconds, we're going to pay you that yield. And you get paid that yield in your account every day. So in a traditional money market fund, you accrue it, but you actually don't have access to that cash until the end of the month when it's paid. Here, that is in your account, ready to use at the end of every day. And so as you can imagine how that also opens up from a commercial standpoint. If you're a corporate treasurer and you have to move money around the world, your ability to, today, you often have to sell in one money market fund, wire it to the other, and then purchase it in the other entity, which means you lose a day or two, sometimes even 3 days of yield. Here, you're going to get the yield paid, and you can move that money around. So it's, for us, what's exciting is it just provides much greater usability and utility than just a traditional money market fund.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the reasons why it's exciting for MoonPay to bring this onto our platform, because we do have all of these merchants who are connected as part of our network and can use our products for treasury management. And so by being able to open up more assets, quality, regulated assets on chain for our merchants, it's really a value add that we're providing to our network. So I think this is very exciting. And now you mentioned tokenized collateral, which is something that I was really excited to have been working on for all of this time. I think since like 2018, probably thinking about tokenized collateral and how that can really free up capital efficiency and promote liquidity overall. So talk to us about Benji as a collateral instrument.
Well, today, a hedge fund or somebody wants to securities lending, so they're borrowing shares. They have to post collateral for the amount of whatever they're borrowing. And traditionally in the crypto world, you were using a stable coin to do that, and you weren't able to get the yield. Now, to give you an idea how in TradFi competitive that is, people will change collateral providers for 1 basis points difference in a money market fund yield. So this is money market funds say yields 3.5%. If your stable coin's yielding 0, that's essentially lost opportunity. And so by the fact that it's tokenized and can be on the crypto rails, you now can leverage it as collateral. And so we're continuing to get it approved and integrating with different exchanges so that it can be posted as collateral.
Exactly, because it's a treasury money market fund. And what is the highest quality asset, the most liquid and deepest asset in the world? It's US Treasuries. So I do sometimes think it's funny because a lot of times in the past when people talked about stable coins, it was like, well, is this kind of a repackaged money market fund? And so I love that, we do have regulatory clarity around tokenized money market funds. This is a use case that is seeing greater and greater adoption. Are you seeing it in the repo market? Are you seeing this being used by trading firms?
So, it's interesting that Benji isn't yet, I don't think it's yet posted in the repo market. However, we're having discussions with institutional clients about that. We do have it on exchanges, so there are some hedge funds that are trading on the crypto exchanges that are now using us as collateral.
And I actually heard that that's one of the fastest growing use cases of iBenji. Talk to us about iBenji.
There you go. So iBenji, International Benji. So the Benji Money Market Fund is approved in the US, in Europe through Luxembourg, in Singapore, and I think Hong Kong. And so what we were trying to build is the ability to actually move money internationally without having to worry about the jurisdiction. And so iBenji gives that flexibility to move money wallet to wallet. And the SEC gave us approval to do peer-to-peer transfer. So today, in a traditional money market fund, if you want to redeem your money market fund or pay someone, you have to go back to the manager, to Franklin Templeton, and we'll give you cash. Now they've approved, and this is completely unique for any kind of security money market fund, is if you have 2 holders of Benji, we can move the money between wallets.
And I think this is something that actually shows how innovative the SEC and the CFTC have become under this new leadership because, honestly, thinking about what things were like in 2024 and then obviously 2025, and then I've been saying that 2026 is really the year of institutional adoption. How are you seeing the changes in the United States impact the clients and partners that you're working with and the sentiment around tokenization and tokenized financial instruments?
Yeah, so basically you had most of your traditional firms were staying away from crypto. And they were staying away because they were worried that if they stepped on it, it was the third rail, they were going to get themselves in trouble. And so it wasn't worth the effort of even exploring it because they just didn't want the regulatory headache. You have an administration that is obviously much more pro-crypto. And so now what's happening is, in a lot of the traditional firms, clients had opened up crypto accounts on the exchanges, and they're hearing those clients say, why can't I hold my assets at Morgan Stanley or UBS or HSBC? I don't want to have to hold them over here. And alternatively, you also have the crypto exchanges who are saying, actually, we're hearing clients want traditional investment products because they view it as their full portfolio, And so actually we have tokenized ETFs, which I know we're talking to you guys about as well. We have tokenized ETFs that are now available on certain exchanges.
So this is something that is so meaningful to me that we're doing this partnership, because I think this really shows the evolution of MoonPay as a company. I mean, MoonPay kind of starting off first as a ramps business, fiat to crypto business, and then also going into crypto payments. But MoonPay's expanded so much beyond that, since 2019 when we were founded by Ivan Soto Wright. And then with our president, Keith Grossman, joining, because then you have express checkout with merchants. You've got a white label stablecoin issuance platform. We have secure wallet infrastructure. We do cards linked to stablecoin accounts. We do obviously fiat to stablecoin and stablecoin to stablecoin. So I think when you look at it, you're seeing that more and more crypto firms are evolving into these platform businesses, infrastructure platform businesses. And so that's why when we saw how MoonPay had this vertically integrated stack, I mean, I think MoonPay's done over 6 acquisitions in the last 18 months to build this. And when I looked at it, it was like, custody, it was trading, it was payments, it was funding, all of this together. And I said, what a great way to launch an institutional business, because this is a turnkey solution that is essentially blockchain in a box. Like, let's say that you are a hedge fund, but you're not natively on chain. You want to use Benji. How is the fastest way for you to be able to get on chain and to use products like Benji? Well, it's by doing a turnkey solution where you can white label the infrastructure from MoonPay Institutional. It's a single direct API integration with one provider as opposed to like 10 different service providers, and it plugs right into the firm's front office systems. I mean, you know what it's like when you have your trade management system, your order booking system, your risk systems going downstream to reporting. So talk to us about how you see tokenization and the adoption in 2026, where it started and what you think is going to be the next thing.
Yeah, and by the way, one of the reasons we actually were able to get comfortable and move very quickly with MoonPay is because this is Commissioner Pham, who was the commissioner of the CFTC. So the commitment to, regulatory compliance, which, in a traditional world, unfortunately, that is something we have to pay attention to all the time. And being able to operate, as I mentioned, Franklin Templeton has clients in 160 countries. So understanding the complexity of the regulatory environment globally was really important to us. And with your experience there, that was very attractive to us. But look, I think if I look forward to where, and I mentioned this when I was on earlier, where's kind of the future of this world? If you think about these smart contracts and the ability to program in there, just imagine you're a AI quant manager. Your ability to actually program in to the tokens to execute atomically 24/7, it is going to change the financial markets and investing and the velocity of investments. But in that, it's also going to challenge the traditional systems that we have, really challenge the traditional systems. And so that's a bit of a risk, actually, anytime you kind of push it with that kind of velocity. But we definitely think that there's going to be a lot of innovation that comes from the ability to program these tokens. I talked earlier about how I think any financial advisor will ultimately say to their clients, let me tell you about your investment returns. It'll be 3 things. Let me tell you about your investment returns. Let me tell you the impact your portfolio has, because I'm going to have the token track things like carbon emissions of companies that you invest in, their carbon footprint, their diversity, whatever you're passionate about, those things will be tracked as part of the investment token. And then finally, you'll see equity companies tying loyalty programs to equity ownership to create engagement with their shareholder base. And that is only enabled because you have this technology that can allow this kind of engagement. So I think that happens. And then the personalization that you're going to be able to do in portfolios because of the nature of being able to program in it, I think really changes what a traditional portfolio looks like. And then you ran risk management at Citi, so you understand the complexity of risk management, but the ability to also embed a certain amount of risk management for your portfolio at the individual client portfolio level is a pretty amazing innovation.
I do think that's something that people don't often realize, that blockchain technology enables better compliance and risk management. I think a lot of people forget that I used to be a global head of compliance, used to work on risk implementation, remediation, and what you see with blockchain technology is you can actually embed the controls in the token or at the asset level. You can customize it at the portfolio level, so you're able to get the snapshot of risk for each client. What is the risk appetite of that client? What is the suitability analysis for that client? And so I think this is something really exciting. And you also mentioned rewards. And I think rewards and loyalty is something that people are not thinking enough about, because in this world where there are so many options and so much consumer choice, how do firms really differentiate with their clients, with their customers? And I think it's by providing increased personalization, by showing that you really understand your audience and that you're able to engage with them where they are and give them what they want. I know one of the things that we've talked about in the past that's really exciting to me is actually thematic portfolio investing. Talk to me about what you see happening there.
Well, I mean, you already have it today, but I think it gets even more specialized, right? So today, I can say, oh, gee, I really think the AI trend is important. That's the obvious one. The AI trend is important. I want to invest in this, and so you'll have ETFs that are thematically. I want to, I'm looking at, I think AI and what we're seeing in life sciences is unbelievable. The pipeline, I'm on a board of a company that is in that industry, and the pipeline of new drugs that are coming out through proteins and things because of what AI is discovering is incredible. So if you take that to the portfolio level, again, we talked about here's your investment returns, your impact and your risk management. But in addition to that, you could say these are the things that I believe are the trends that are really important to me, and I want you to customize. It may be clothing trends, right? And you literally will be able to choose in the token and execute on your favorite brands, as opposed to just saying, I'm going to go buy this ETF that does consumer brands. I want these brands, and so I want to own equity. And as you see the trends trade, I mean, I could tie that. Imagine if I could tie that to social media. So suddenly this brand is appearing much more times. That can then trigger a purchase of an equity portfolio. And again, this type of thing is simply enabled because you got it programmed into the smart contract.
And I think this reflects something that we all feel is true, but has not been as easy until now with some of these innovations. Because, I mean, if you love a clothing brand and you're wearing it and you believe it's going to be successful, why wouldn't you want to buy that equity? Why wouldn't you want to buy that stock? And so I do feel that when people feel like, people love brands, they're engaging with those brands. And so I feel like this is something really exciting for how we kind of move around and interact with our world and with trends and things like that.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay, so you're a regulator. You obviously regulated traditional. There is a huge amount of disruption that this technology is going to impact traditional firms. How did you as a regulator, and I guess, it sort of was on the periphery at the time, but it is coming. How do you think about that, in kind of a regulatory environment as you have sort of a somewhat unregulated that dramatically changes, I'm going to say threatens, kind of the traditional business case? How did you think about that?
So it was interesting for me because I think it really comes down to what are your first principles and what is your North Star. And so from a regulatory perspective for me, and a lot of this was because I had first been staff at the CFTC and the SEC and the OCC when I was in law school, and just kind of seeing, how the rules are made, working on implementing Dodd-Frank myself, then having to go over to the private sector and having to actually take these words on a page, which are not written in normal plain English words, and then interpret that and be like, okay, well, when you're building a system, it needs to be black or white. What is the logic? Are you putting the control in here or there? And so that's something that I don't think people really understand. And so when I came and I was a regulator, the first thing I always thought when I was working on a rule or guidance was, can I implement this? And if I can't figure out how to implement this after having led work streams that were enterprise-wide, having run $1 billion compliance program, having gone through significant transformation initiatives, if I can't figure out how to do it, then how is anyone else, let alone with these resources, going to be able to do that? So the first principles are really number one, that it should be a principles-based regulatory framework. And so when it comes to technology, that also means that regulations and rules should be technology neutral. because it needs to be able to evolve and keep up with the times and be evergreen. So by just thinking about having a risk governance framework, all your same risk stripes, market risk, credit risk, liquidity risk, operational risk, and then just applying that there, this is really no different than all these other technological innovations in the past. I mean, sometimes I think about stablecoins as like modern day traveler's checks. This is from a conversation I had with a former colleague at Citi. And, it's like, oh, look, it's like, on demand. You can go someplace, you can get cash for it. And I just feel like a lot of times we're just seeing this like really natural evolution and modernization. And so when regulators kind of take a step back and you're not so focused on the weeds, but you're just thinking overall, generally, and also just thinking about, having access to financial markets. And one of the things that's so exciting about what we can do with MoonPay and with our huge retail base is actually make investing more accessible, especially to younger investors who think that investing is like meme coins or something, right? Imagine if they had access to quality products that actually really do pay a return and are low risk. And so that's something that's pretty exciting.
Okay, so I'm going to share a stat that is this whole thing around giving access earlier and why it's so important. I always say, people ask me, like, give me investment advice. I go, you know what the number one investment advice is? Invest. Why? If you are 20 years old and you invest $5,000 a year between age 20 to 29 and stop investing but leave your money compounding, say 7% a year, you will have more money when you reach age 60 than the person who starts at age 30 and invests $5,000 a year for 30 years, right? So being able to get people engaged, it's actually one of the reasons I like the Trump account, is that we get people learning about the market early and investment benefits and the power of compounding, because the power of compounding is your best tailwind to investing. And so this technology enabling access, so if I got, I'm a kid and I got $5 and I can suddenly own the S&P 500 through fractional shares, that's actually a really good thing.
Yeah, I know, and I think it's great because it just really helps with financial literacy and financial inclusion, which I think is so important as well. I want to go back to something you said earlier, which was about the convergence of TradFi and DeFi. So this was also how I came to thinking about what blockchain technology was going to evolve to. So back in 2018, Citi's a bank that's the pipes and plumbing around the world. I'm like, well, this is better pipes and plumbing. How do we evolve? How do we keep up with that? And because I was working on all of these issues around open banking at the time and thinking about payments and fintech and the regulatory process there, which was over 20 years in Washington, I thought it is inevitable that we are going to come to a convergence of TradFi and DeFi. And that's one of the things that was so exciting for me about being able to bring MoonPay institutional and launch it, is because it's really a one-click fiat to on-chain liquidity solution. By putting together all of MoonPay's capabilities and our licenses, it is that easy as this one-click fiat to DeFi on-chain liquidity, especially when you think about, there's so much debate about like different chains, different tokens. And we at MoonPay take this position where it's like, you know what, it can be any token, any chain, any wallet. We'll connect to all of them together. And so MoonPay Trade is our natively interoperable solution. It is interoperable across both permissioned and permissionless networks. It is protocol agnostic, it is venue agnostic, and it's connected to over 200 plus blockchains and protocols. And again, a single API integration. So when I think about bringing Benji to the world, this is something that's really exciting to me about the scale of that. And it's also about being able to turn on, like I said, blockchain in a box, or it's almost like neobanking. Like, do you think people are going to now start to launch these neobanks that are just natively digital asset banking services?
It's funny, so I know a guy who runs a company that, like Walmart, Target, hires this company. So this company, because they have employees that sometimes need money. I work Monday, I need the money on Tuesday. I need to get paid on Tuesday. And so the companies will enable them to pre-fund the paycheck. And so these are people that have never had a real checking account. They can't afford a real checking account, right? They get paid, they go in, and unfortunately, it probably costs them a fair bit of fees. And so we're having this conversation like, well, why shouldn't that partial payment even go into Benji, right? Why shouldn't somebody who, even if they need to get paychecks, they can't afford to get them every 2 weeks, they have to get them every 3 days, not be able to get yield on at least a little bit of the money that they're not spending? And like, if you think about that, because these are people who have absolutely zero access to any kind of investment account. And this technology is going to enable that kind of access, which I think is pretty amazing.
It is pretty exciting. So one of the things that was very cool to me about working with Franklin Templeton is that, here this is one of the largest and most reputable asset managers in the world. But actually, you've always been very technology forward. So I know a lot of times people aren't thinking asset managers and technology. Talk to me about what it was like to have this technology forward position and really, again, being this visionary and thinking about adopting one of the first adopters of digital assets. That must have been really hard to be, such a traditional asset manager, but be pushing this technology.
Yeah. I mean, we started the journey in probably 2017, 2018. I got to tell you, even as CEO, there was so much like, why the hell are we spending money on this? What a waste of time. This is irresponsible. And then you had FTX. And see, I told you, all the crypto skeptics were like, I told you this is a waste of money. We shouldn't be doing it. And, the good news was I was CEO. So I could keep the group as a second group reporting directly to me, right? And I could protect them. And I think this is a challenge for any traditional firm. I don't care what business you're in. You need people who get today's job done, and you need people who are dreamers thinking about what's going to happen in the future. And by the way, you need the right balance of them, and you need to protect the dreamers. Can't have too many of them because you still need to pay the bills. You need to protect the dreamers, actually be okay with them failing at times. And it's really hard because, by the way, when you're a public company, the pressure on quarterly earnings is very real. And so this group, these guys, I'm not sure when exactly they're going to pay for themselves, but I know they will at some point. But so that's what it was like. It was actually, thinking about, we have this innovative group. I'm going to protect them. I know there are a lot of skeptics in the firm, but who are, and they're annoyed, right? Because they think they get a disproportionate amount of attention. But you have to do it, especially in times like this where you have intense technological innovation. Same thing for AI projects, honestly, right now in any firm. Because you're going to hit more dead ends before you have successes. But if you aren't playing around with AI and experimenting and figuring out how to make it work, you're going to be left behind.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, anytime you're leading a transformation initiative, you do have to put together that SWAT team, right, that's really committed to pushing change, because it can be hard to change any kind of large organization. I feel like I should give you the last question to ask me as we're coming to an end of our time up here, even though we're having so much fun.
So as you look at, I'm going to give you a layup question. You had a lot of choices of companies coming off as the commissioner of the CFTC. Here's the beauty. Everybody wants to be validated with summary. Why'd you pick MoonPay?
Oh, this is a fun story for me. So coming to MoonPay was actually something very personal for me because, like I said, Ivan and Keith are dear friends of mine. We had known each other for years. Actually had met Keith because we were both speaking at a conference and happened to be sitting together at the speaker dinner. Then he told this really bad dad joke. I started choking, and then this beautiful fresh chip blossomed from there. But it was really because having been at Citi and having been able to drive the Global Markets Advisory Committee, really addressing these big picture issues about market structure. And I want to thank Franklin Templeton for their leadership, co-chairing the Digital Asset Market Subcommittee for me when I was at the agency. I wanted to go to some place that had that same commitment to driving the future forward, that same kind of scale, that same ability to reach out and really touch a lot of lives around the world and make them better, because that's what got me going to work every day when I was at Citi, was this feeling like we were really bringing these important financial services that made the world go round, that made governments function, that made multinational corporates function, that helped to protect people's investments. And so that was something very meaningful to me. But I always knew that I wanted to go back to something in the banking, payments, fintech, markets, that kind of broader picture place, because I missed doing a lot of that. I mean, I don't know how many people noticed, but I kept doing things that are not traditionally like CFTC things when I was leading the Global Markets Advisory Committee. I was like, oh yeah, let's do T+1 security settlement, right? There's an FX component to that, right? Let's do market volatility controls. Let's look at the treasury market and repo and funding, and how do we make that more efficient? How do we do collateral efficiency? So those were the things that I felt like I could really make an impact. And actually, I'll just say that we did unlock $25 billion of capital and collateral relief last year when I was leading the agency. And so that makes me feel like now this is collateral that has been unlocked, can be deployed into things like Benji using MoonPay trade. So there you have it.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody.